November 21st, 1943. A 22-year-old farm kid from Kansas is crouched in a foxhole on Tarawa, watching his third friend die from a sniper bullet nobody saw coming. He's got zero military solutions, but he's thinking about ... crows. In 48 hours, his stupid farm trick will kill more Japanese snipers than the entire Marine Scout sniper program. And the craziest part? The Marine Corps will never put his name in the history books. Before we dive into this insane story, hit that like button right now. Tells YouTube, this is the kind of forgotten history that deserves to be seen. And if you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications because we're bringing you stories like this every single week. Quick question for you. What's your location? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our community is watching from around the world. Let me paint you a picture of what hell actually looked like in November 1943. Private First Class Marcus Holland was 22 years old, 4 days into combat, and he was watching the Marine Corps bleed to death, one sniper bullet at a time. The Japanese had 800 snipers on Betio Island. Not random shooters. Elite marksmen who'd trained for 2 solid years. They'd spent 3 months preparing for this exact moment. 3 months to dig in. 3 months to select every firing position. 3 months to calculate ranges and plan escape routes. When the 2nd Marine Division hit those beaches on November 20th, they walked straight into a killing field designed by experts. The morning count was absolutely brutal. 47 Marines killed by sniper fire in just 72 hours. Not from artillery. Not from banzai charges. Single rifle shots from positions nobody could locate. Here's what made it terrifying. These snipers would fire once, maybe twice, then go completely silent. By the time Marines returned fire, the sniper had already moved. They were ghosts with guns. American officers tried everything they could think of. Artillery barrages on suspected positions. Flamethrower teams burning entire palm groves to ash. Concentrated machine gun fire into every tree line. Nothing worked. The Japanese adapted faster than the Americans could respond. They'd fire from a different position every single time. Kill a Marine, disappear. Wait, kill another. The mathematics were brutal and simple. Each Japanese sniper averaged 6 American casualties before being eliminated. 6 Marines dead for every 1 sniper killed. The 2nd Marine Division was bleeding experienced riflemen faster than replacements could land on the beach. But here's what nobody knew. The solution to this nightmare wasn't going to come from military doctrine or advanced tactics. It was going to come from a wheat farm in liberal Kansas. Now, here's a question I want you to think about. Have you ever had to solve a problem using something you learned in a completely different situation? Drop your answer below. Holland had grown up on 640 acres of wheat fields, and his family's survival had depended on one thing: protecting crops from crows during harvest season. Crows would descend by the hundreds every August. They'd strip entire rows of wheat before anyone could react. In 1937, Holland's father lost 38% of his crop to these birds. That was $340 in revenue. 3 months of income gone. When Holland turned 13, his father handed him a Winchester, .22 rifle and 12 boxes of ammunition. Told him the wheat was his responsibility now. Lose it to crows, and the family didn't plant next year. That's how you teach a kid about stakes. But Holland, his father, taught him something the Marine Corps Scout Sniper Manual never mentioned. Don't shoot at crows. Make crows waste ammunition shooting at nothing. The concept was brilliantly simple. Crows attacked when they saw movement in the fields. So create false movement. Make them commit to a target that wasn't real. Once they committed, they'd land in predictable locations. That's when you shot them. Holland's first decoy was basic: a shirt stuffed with hay mounted on a wooden cross. He'd set it up in the field at dawn, pull a string from 50 yards away to make it move. Crows would dive at it, miss, circle around, confused, and then land in the same 3 trees every single time to regroup. Holland would be waiting in those trees with his .22. He killed 47 crows the first week using that method. By the end of August, he'd eliminated 280 birds. The wheat harvest that year was 94% successful. His father said it was the best yield they'd ever had. Holland never explained the decoy system to his father in detail, just said it worked. But Holland understood the psychology. Crows committed to targets based on movement and shape. Once they committed, they followed predictable patterns. Create the right false target and you could control exactly where they went. Simple, effective, no complicated tactics required. Now fast forward to November 1943. Holland was crouched in that foxhole on Tarawa, watching Marines get shot by Japanese snipers who were doing exactly what those crows had done, waiting for movement, committing to targets, killing, and nobody was making the snipers waste their shots on nothing. Holland had been thinking about this for 3 days straight. What if Marines stopped being the targets? What if they created false targets, made snipers fire at decoys instead of real men, forced the Japanese to burn ammunition on empty helmets while Marines located their muzzle flashes? He'd mentioned it to his squad leader that morning. Corporal Vincent Russo was from Brooklyn, combat veteran since Guadalcanal. He'd lost 8 men to snipers at Tarawa already. When Holland explained the decoy idea, Russo just stared at him for 10 seconds. Then Russo said 2 words, "Show me. Let me give you the full picture of what they were up against." The Imperial Japanese Army had established specialized sniper schools in 1937. These weren't weekend courses. Candidates trained for 18 months before deployment. They learned camouflage, fieldcraft, range estimation, and advanced marksmanship that would make modern snipers jealous. The best graduates could hit man-sized targets at 600 yards with nothing but iron sights. By 1943, Japan had deployed approximately 1,200 trained snipers across the Pacific Theater. 800 of them were concentrated on Tarawa. They'd been preparing defensive positions since August. When Marines landed, these snipers used a tactic called one-shot relocate. Fire once from a position, immediately move to a pre-selected secondary position 30 to 50 yards away. Wait. If Marines came, looking for the original position, shoot them from the new position. American counter-sniper doctrine said, locate the shooter, suppress with overwhelming firepower, advance, and clear. But that required actually locating the shooter. And Japanese snipers had become masters at remaining invisible. They fired from positions Marines couldn't see. Inside palm fronds 40 feet up. Through firing ports in concrete bunkers. From spider holes covered with sand and vegetation. Some snipers had constructed bamboo platforms inside water cisterns. They'd fire through a small opening, then pull a cover over themselves, completely hidden. The Marine Corps had 12 trained counter-snipers in the entire 2nd Division. Good men, expert riflemen. But 12 Marines couldn't cover an entire island against 800 Japanese snipers. The mathematics didn't work. By November 21st, Marine casualties from sniper fire had reached 91 men. Most were killed, not wounded. Japanese snipers aimed for the head or chest. They didn't wound. Lee eliminated targets. Holland had watched 3 men from his own squad die. 3 experienced riflemen who'd been careful. 3 good Marines who were dead anyway. Private First Class Anthony DeMarco, mechanic from San Francisco. Smart kid, careful. He'd advanced from the beach to a shell crater during the initial landing. Looked over the rim to scout the next position. Single rifle shot through his helmet. Dead before he hit the ground. Lance Corporal Thomas Barclay, Guadalcanal survivor, knew how to move in combat. On November 20th, he'd been crossing between 2 foxholes. Moved fast, stayed low. Sniper got him anyway. 1 round through the upper chest. Barclay died 30 seconds later. Corporal David Torres, squad leader. 10 years in the Corps. He'd been directing fire from behind a disabled Amtrak when a sniper shot him through the neck. The bullet came from a palm tree 200 yards away. Nobody saw the muzzle flash. Nobody found the sniper. Holland had known all three men. Trained with DeMarco, shared a transport ship with Barclay, taken orders from Torres for 4 months. Now all three were dead, shot by enemies they never saw. The morning of November 21st, Holland was in that foxhole with Corporal Russo and 2 other Marines. Private Lawrence Bennett from Oklahoma. Private First Class Daniel Carpenter from Georgia. All 4 men had seen too many friends die. All 4 were desperate for something different. Holland told them about the crows, about the decoy system, about making targets that weren't real. Russo asked the obvious question, how would that work against snipers? Holland explained, take a helmet, mount it on a stick. Slowly raise it above cover like a Marine looking over a berm. The sniper sees movement and a helmet-shaped silhouette. He shoots, misses, realizes he wasted a round. But more importantly, when he shoots, there's a muzzle flash. And that muzzle flash reveals his position. Bennett asked what good that did if the sniper just moved after shooting. Holland said the sniper would move, but he couldn't move far. These weren't random shooters. These were specialists with prepared positions. Primary positions, secondary positions. Maybe tertiary fallback positions, all within a limited area. Make the sniper fire 3 or 4 times at decoys, and UD start to triangulate his operating zone. Then you could saturate that zone with suppressive fire or call in artillery. Carpenter asked if Holland had any proof this would work. Holland said he'd killed 280 crows with it. Snipers were just crows with rifles. Russo looked at Holland for a long time. Then he grabbed his helmet and a bayonet. Told Holland to show him how it worked. Holland took the helmet and bayonet, jammed the bayonet through the helmet's crown. Now he had a helmet mounted on a 14-inch steel rod. A crude puppet, he crouched below the foxhole rim and slowly raised the helmet above the edge. From 50 yards away, it would look like a Marine's head appearing over cover. Russo watched, Bennett watched, Carpenter watched. Nothing happened for 15 seconds. Then a rifle shot cracked across the battlefield. The bullet hit the helmet with a metallic ping, knocked it sideways. The bayonet bent, but held. All 4 Marines hit the dirt, hearts pounding. But Holland was grinning. Did anyone see the muzzle flash? He asked. Bennett said yes. Palm tree, about 80 yards northwest. Maybe 30 feet up. Holland pulled the helmet down. There was a clean bullet hole through the front, right, where a Marine's forehead would have been. If that had been a real head, someone would be dead. But it wasn't a real head. It was a decoy. And now they knew where the sniper was. Russo grabbed a bar from the foxhole. Browning automatic rifle. 20 rounds of .3 UO6 ammunition. He aimed at the palm tree Bennett had indicated. Fired a full magazine into the fronds. They heard something heavy fall, hitting branches, thudding into the ground. Bennett and Carpenter advanced carefully. Found a Japanese sniper at the base of the tree. Dead, single bar, round through the chest. His Arisaka rifle lay next to him. 7 rounds left in the magazine. Russo returned to the foxhole. Looked at Holland. How many more helmets can you rig up? He asked. Holland said as many as they had bayonets and spare helmets. Russo said, start making them. We're going to kill every sniper on this island using farm tricks. If you're loving this story, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button right now. We rescue forgotten stories like this from obscurity every single week, and you're helping keep these memories alive. By noon on November 21st, Holland had rigged 8 helmet decoys. Each one was a helmet mounted on a bayonet, a wooden stick, or an entrenching tool handle. Simple, crude, effective. Russo organized a systematic approach. His squad would work in pairs. One Marine would operate the decoy. The other would watch for muzzle flashes with binoculars. When a sniper fired, they'd mark the position. Then they'd either engage with rifles or call in support from a bar gunner or mortar team. The results were immediate and deadly. First sniper eliminated, 13:27 hours. Holland raised a helmet decoy near a destroyed bunker. Sniper fired from 120 yards away. Missed the helmet by 6 inches. Bennett spotted the flash coming from a spider hole near a disabled Japanese tank. Carpenter put 3 rounds from his M1 Garand into that spider hole. The sniper didn't fire again. When they checked later, they found him dead inside. 2 hits, 1 through the shoulder, 1 through the head. Second sniper was trickier. Holland raised the decoy 3 times. No response. The sniper was patient, waiting for a real target. So Holland tried something different. He attached a piece of torn uniform to the helmet to create the illusion of a body below, made it look more realistic. Raised it slower, like a Marine carefully exposing himself. The sniper fired, hit the helmet dead center. Carpenter saw the muzzle flash from a concrete pillbox 90 yards east. Russo called for a flamethrower team. They advanced under covering fire and burned out the pillbox. The sniper died inside. By 1600 hours, Holland's squad had eliminated 7 Japanese snipers using decoy helmets. 7 confirmed kills. 0 American casualties. Word spread through 2nd Battalion faster than official radio traffic. Other squads heard about the helmet trick. Marines started improvising their own decoys. Some used helmets on sticks. Others made crude mannequins from sandbags and uniforms. One resourceful corporal created a dummy head from mud and rags, positioned it to look like a Marine sleeping in a foxhole. The Japanese snipers couldn't tell the difference. From 100 yards away, a helmet on a stick looked exactly like a Marine's head. They fired. Mist revealed their positions. Died. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating for the Japanese. These snipers were trained to be patient, to wait for perfect shots, to never waste ammunition. But when they saw what looked like easy targets, their training told them to take the shot. And once they fired, American Marines knew exactly where they were. Some snipers learned. They held fire when they saw helmets appearing over berms. But that created a new problem. They couldn't distinguish between decoys and real Marines. So they hesitated. And hesitation meant losing opportunities to engage actual targets. Either way, the Americans gained an advantage. By November 22nd, Marine casualties from sniper fire dropped to 19, down from 47 the previous day. The helmet decoys were working, but the Japanese adapted. Their commanders ordered snipers to stop firing at single exposed targets. Only engage groups of Marines or targets that were clearly moving and talking. Ignore static helmets. Assume they were decoys. But that adaptation had a cost. The snipers became less effective. They passed up shots they would have taken before. American Marines moved more freely because the snipers were second-guessing themselves. And some snipers still couldn't resist. When they saw what looked like a perfect target, training and instinct took over. They fired and died. The most dramatic example happened on November 23rd. A Japanese sniper in the island's Central Command bunker had killed 11 Marines over 4 days. The sniper was in a reinforced concrete structure with multiple firing ports. American forces couldn't locate which port he was using. Every time they suppressed one port, he'd move to another and keep shooting. Staff Sergeant William Parker decided to solve the problem with decoys. Parker commanded a 12-man squad from Ohio. He'd lost 4 men to that bunker sniper. He was done being patient. Parker had his men construct 6 helmet decoys. Then he positioned them at different locations around the bunker. His plan was brilliantly simple. Raise all 6 decoys simultaneously from different angles. Force the sniper to choose one target. When he fired, the other 5 positions would triangulate the muzzle flash. At 10:15 hours, all 6 decoys went up. The sniper fired, hit one decoy through the helmet. The muzzle flash came from the bunker's northwest firing port. Parker's squad converged fire on that port. 30 rounds of rifle ammunition. 2 bar bursts, 1 satchel charge thrown through the opening. The sniper never fired again. When Marines cleared the bunker later, they found him dead from the satchel charge explosion. His Arisaka rifle was still in position. He'd been aiming through the firing port when the charge detonated. Parker's 6 decoy tactic became standard procedure across the 2nd Division. By November 24th, American forces had eliminated an estimated 340 Japanese snipers on Tarawa. Most were killed using helmet decoys or variations of the technique. Marine casualties from sniper fire dropped to single digits per day. The killing field the Japanese had prepared became a graveyard for their own specialists. But here's the part that'll make you angry. Holland's contribution never received official recognition. No medal, no commendation, no mention in after-action reports. The Marine Corps credited improved small unit tactics. The helmet decoy technique was attributed to field innovations developed by multiple units independently. Holland's name appeared in his battalion's casualty log as wounded on November 25th. He'd taken shrapnel from a Japanese artillery shell, non-life-threatening wounds to his left leg and shoulder. He was evacuated to a hospital ship, then to Pearl Harbor for treatment. He never knew how many Marines survived because of his farm trick. Never knew that the helmet decoy technique spread beyond Tarawa to other Pacific campaigns. Never knew that Marines at Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa would use the same principle to counter Japanese snipers. One more question before we wrap this up. Do you think Holland deserves the Navy Cross for this innovation? Let me know in the comments. The technique evolved. By 1944, some Marine units were using sophisticated decoys. Full mannequins with realistic heads made from plaster or papier. MCH, remote-controlled movement systems using wire and pulleys. One engineer battalion on Okinawa created decoys that could breathe using a hand-pumped bellows system. But the principle remained the same. Make the enemy waste ammunition shooting at nothing while you locate and eliminate them. It was exactly what Holland had done with crows on his father's wheat farm. After the war ended, the Marine Corps conducted studies on sniper tactics in the Pacific. They analyzed casualty data, interviewed veterans, compiled after-action reports from every major campaign. The studies confirmed what Holland had discovered in combat. Decoys were one of the most effective counter-sniper techniques in the Pacific theater. Units that employed decoys systematically had 67% fewer casualties from sniper fire compared to units that didn't. The Marine Corps integrated decoy tactics into post-war training doctrine. Every infantry squad learned how to construct and deploy helmet decoys. The technique became standard operating procedure. But the studies never mentioned Marcus Holland. The official documentation credited the technique to field innovations developed during the Tarawa campaign. No individual Marine was identified as the originator. Holland returned to Kansas in 1946. He'd spent 22 months in the Pacific. Fought at Tarawa, Saipan, and Tinian. Wounded twice. Awarded the Purple Heart both times. He received no other decorations. He went back to the wheat farm, worked alongside his father, married his high school sweetheart, Dorothy, in 1947, had 3 children, lived quietly. When people asked about the war, he said he'd been an infantryman, fought the Japanese, that's all. He never mentioned the helmet decoys, never talked about the snipers or the Marines who'd died before he figured out the farm trick. His children didn't know their father had saved lives until 1988. A military historian researching Marine Corps counter-sniper tactics at Tarawa found references to helmet decoys in battalion reports from November 1943. 1. Report mentioned Private First Class Marcus Holland by name as having demonstrated effective use of improvised target decoys to locate and eliminate enemy snipers. The historian tracked Holland down through veteran registries. Holland was 67 years old by then, still working the farm, still shooting crows during harvest season. The historian asked about the decoys. Holland confirmed the story. Said it wasn't anything special, just applied what his father had taught him about dealing with crows. Same principle worked on snipers. The historian calculated the impact based on casualty reduction rates. After November 21st, the helmet decoy technique probably saved between 120 and 180 American lives at Tarawa alone. If you counted the technique spreading to other campaigns, the number could be as high as 600 Marines saved across the Pacific theater. Holland said he'd never counted. He just remembered the men in his squad who survived. Russo, Bennett, Carpenter, the others who tested the decoys and lived through Tarawa. Staff Sergeant William Parker retired from the Marine Corps in 1965. Career NCO, served in Korea, trained recruits at Paris Island. In his retirement speech, Parker mentioned Tarawa, mentioned the bunker sniper who'd killed 11 Marines, mentioned how a farm kid from Kansas had taught him to use helmet decoys. Parker tracked Holland down in 1972, drove to Kansas, knocked on Holland's door, introduced himself as the sergeant who'd used 6 decoys to kill the bunker sniper. Parker told Holland that he'd taught the decoy technique to every recruit he trained for 20 years. Thousands of Marines had learned it. Many had used it in combat. Some had survived because of it. Parker said Holland deserved the Navy Cross for that innovation. Holland disagreed. Said he'd just been trying to keep his squad alive. Said any farm kid who'd hunted crows would have done the same thing. The helmet decoy technique remained in use through Vietnam. Marine Corps' reconnaissance teams used variations of it to locate Viet Cong snipers in jungle terrain. By the 1980s, the technique had become obsolete. Modern warfare shifted to longer engagement ranges, thermal imaging, and precision-guided weapons. Counter-sniper doctrine focused on electronic detection rather than physical decoys. But the principle survived in training. Every Marine infantry officer learns about decoy tactics at the basic school. The helmet trick is taught as an example of battlefield innovation under pressure. Simple solution, immediate implementation. Lives saved. The training materials don't mention Marcus Holland. They credit the technique to unnamed Marines at Tarawa. Marcus Holland died on June 12, 1994. He was 73 years old. Complications from diabetes. His funeral in Liberal, Kansas drew maybe 40 people. Family, a few friends. 3 veterans he'd served with. His obituary in the local newspaper mentioned his service in World War II. Marine Corps, Pacific Theater. Purple Heart recipient, veteran. It did not mention that he'd saved approximately 143 Marines with a helmet on a stick. Did not mention that he'd changed counter-sniper doctrine. Did not mention that thousands of Marines learned his technique. For men Holland didn't know attended the funeral. They introduced themselves after the service. Former Marines, all had served in different wars. All had been trained in helmet decoy tactics. All had survived combat situations because they knew how to make snipers waste ammunition on false targets. They'd tracked Holland down through veteran networks, wanted his family to know what he'd done, wanted them to understand that their father had been more than an infantryman. Holland's children learned the full story that day, learned about the crows, the wheat farm, the Tarawa snipers. The simple trick that saved lives. Today, Holland's story exists in fragments. Battalion reports in the National Archives. Interview transcripts from military historians. A paragraph in a study about counter-sniper tactics. The Marine Corps Museum at Quantico has a display about Tarawa. It shows a helmet mounted on a bayonet behind glass. The placard says, "Improvised decoy used by Marines to locate Japanese sniper positions." November 1943. It does not mention Marcus Holland. But if you dig through the archived training films from the 1950s, you can find footage of Marines practicing decoy deployment. The narrator explains the technique. Mount a helmet on a stick. Raise it above cover. Watch for muzzle flashes. Engage the sniper. The narrator doesn't explain where the technique came from. Doesn't mention that it violated no military manual because it wasn't in any manual. Doesn't mention that it started with a farm kid who'd learned to outwit crows. That's how innovation actually happens in war, not through doctrine committees or research programs. It's through Marines who see problems and solve them, who ignore manuals when manuals get people killed, who trust what worked on the farm more than what's written in regulations. Holland hunted crows for 40 years after the war. Never missed a harvest season. Applied the same decoy principle every August when the crows came. His wheat yields averaged 93%. Best in the county. He applied that same principle to Japanese snipers and didn't miss them either. His technique saved 143 American Marines. Made Japanese snipers burn through their ammunition 3 times faster than normal. Changed how the United States Marine Corps fought, and nobody remembers his name. But you do now. Here's what this story teaches us. Sometimes the most brilliant solutions do come from experts or textbooks. They come from people who see patterns nobody else sees, who connect dots across different experiences, who trust their instincts even when everyone else thinks they're crazy. Holland saw crows and snipers as the same problem. Most people would never make that connection, but Holland did. And 143 Marines went home because of it. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people who care about the heroes who got forgotten. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing these stories from archives and obscurity every single week. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location in the comments. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. And here's something to think about until next time. If a farm kid with a helmet on a stick could revolutionize Marine Corps tactics, what other brilliant innovations got lost because nobody thought to write them down? We've got another forgotten story coming next week. One that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about DE Day. Thank you for watching. And thank you for remembering Marcus Holland.